I was in Kroger one day, just sitting in the parking lot, just thinking about I was driving, thinking about my kids, and I get to the Kroger parking lot, and I just felt like, like they got to know God for themselves. Like that was kind of my revelation in the Kroger parking lot. Like as much as you want to make them do right, if you will, like they got to have their own God experience. Like we've all had to come to Christ our own separate ways. I'm not here on the backs of my mom's faith or my wife's faith. I'm here on the back of my, what God did for me specifically in my life, and you gotta have their own God experience. So I just gotta trust that, the seeds have been planted, it's been watered, and God's gonna have to add the increase.
Welcome to the Faithful Fathering Podcast. Thank you for joining us. And as you may already know, this is Father's Day month. While Father's Day falls on the third Sunday in June, we're celebrating dads across the month because that's what Faithful Fathering does, encourages and equips dads in partnership with the church to be faithful fathers. In the studio with us, a dear friend, Ian Moore. We're just talking about Father's Day month and some of the things and the analogies. Thanks for being with us, Ian.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We've talked about the strategy. Ian, by the way, is not only a man, husband, father, brother, son. He's also the lead dad at Living Word Church, and we've talked about the pass the baton strategy that Faithful Fathering passes off to the church. Pass being, as I've said before, I'm a recovering engineer, so PASS stands for Purpose-Filled Dads, which is the team you're putting together, activities for dads, studies for dads, and then staying connected with weekend retreats. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the analogy is to always have that baton and be ready to pass it off effectively to the next generation. Absolutely. Now, you've got your own perspective. I want to hear a story about how, your experience with passing the baton and how you share that with your men.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When we met, you gave me the book, and I had an opportunity to read it. I read it. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I think right after that was some sort of track event. I can't remember the exact track event it was, but it was Shelly Ann Fraser Price's last track event. So it was a 4x1. She's retiring after this race, very last race. Jamaicans versus Americans, the rivalry is just, if you know anything about track, the Jamaicans versus Americans is it, right? It's the rivalry in track. And, after this race, this is it for her. So watching this race, it's exciting. I love track. My son's a track athlete, so really excited about this. So she is the second leg of the 4x1. And she's running and she's, winning her event, her leg, if you will. And she passes the baton to the young lady in front of her. And what got me is that I saw her face as she passed the baton. And she screamed out, "Go!" With such you felt it. It gave me goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it when she passed that baton. But in that moment, you knew this is her last race, but she was passing that legacy on to the young lady in front of her. And I really thought about that from a fatherhood perspective. That's literally what we're doing as fathers. We're in this race as men, and we're looking at our kids, and we're pushing them to go faster, go harder, go stronger than we ever could. And it just reminded me of your book. As soon as I saw it, I thought of your book right away, and I shared that with our men. I think that was it was the month of November because we had what's called our Men's Giving. We play off the word Friendsgiving. And we have a big fish fry at the end of the year, every year. And I shared that with the men, and it just resonated with me, because that's what we're doing when we pass that baton. We're pushing our kids to go, harder, faster, stronger than we ever could. So.
And that, as you have some older dads in your circles, any discussion about how well they passed the baton?
Yeah, absolutely. It was both. It was how well and also the struggles of passing the baton as well. So, I think it brought about some real deep conversations. So we enjoyed our fish, as we always do. But I think the conversations were rich, kind of after that analogy. And it was just something just God showed me, during that track event. So.
Fantastic. Well, that always worries me. I've talked with dads that are trying to hang on to that baton, and I said, it gets a little awkward trying to run that last leg of the race, but both of you hanging on to that baton. You've got to pass it on. But the analogy is that we pass it gently, but they have to grab it firmly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what are your and we talk about the seasons of fathering. So it's not as if we're passing the baton every season, but we essentially are. There's
Mhm.
something that we have to let go of. In the teacher season, we're so focused on the instruction and the
Yeah.
intentionality
Mhm.
because in that window, our kids, there's no pushback. They
Mhm.
trust us.
Mhm.
Now as your son gets to 10, I'm thinking you're starting to see some pushback probably,
Yeah.
and that's why we can't go. We're kind of moving. We're letting go of the teacher season and moving into the coach season,
Yeah.
understanding that pushback's part of his development,
Yeah.
and so we have to coach him through that. So
Mhm.
we're not teaching as much. We're coaching more so. But then, as you know, in my analogy, there is that the counselor season is, I think, is the toughest. With you've got grown kids, is
Mhm.
to let go. It gets number one, it gets here just so daggum fast. You
Mhm.
turn around
Mhm.
and they're graduating high school, but then the second bit is to realize, they now are on their journey.
Mhm. Mhm.
Any thoughts? How have you done as far as letting go of the baton with your grown kids?
That's interesting. I've never articulated it the way you have, with the different seasons, but I feel it and I talk about it oftentimes, So there's that younger stage where it's about discipline, but now I got my older kids, it's about mentoring, right? So
Hmm.
it's just a different season. I joke with my 20 something year old, say, you're too old to get your butt whooped now, So now it's
The
about,
real story is
yeah.
probably bigger than you now.
Oh, yeah, and stronger. So, but I mean, now it's just different, right? I mean, my middle son, he was actually at the house last night. I had a fifth grade graduation yesterday, so had cake and pizza. I just hung out at the house last night. So um, he's about to get married. He's kind of having those conversations of proposing, and things like that. So had that conversation with him yesterday, and I just kind of remember walking out the door, and I'm just like, wow, this is. It felt good, like he's trusting me with that. Dad, what does this look like? And let's talk about this and asking things about marriage, and so it's a different conversation as they become older. I remember buying cars,
Mm,
helping them buy cars and thinking through, should I
mm,
lease or buy, or should I save money, and and just those conversations are just different and they're just fulfilling,
yeah.
so. And each child is different. One is just very just strong-willed, and I'm going to do it my way. And then he comes back and said, "Dad, I should have listened to you." The other one says, "Dad, how do I?" in the front end. So,
Hmm.
um, but I mean, my other son's in the military, and I don't get a chance to talk to him often. He's in the Navy. He's in Greece right now. So,
Hmm.
got a chance to talk to him. Probably first time I talked to him like a month and a half or so,
Hmm.
and he was able to get off the ship. He said, "Dad, I got a hotel," and it was just good to just lay in a queen bed and just relax. But
The simple pleasures in
it's the
life.
simple pleasures. He said people weren't turning lights on every night, and it's just good to get away. And but just those levels of conversation, and then looking at my 10-year-old, where it's like I'm having to do it all over again, with him. But just watching him just be a kid. It was after his fifth grade graduation last night. He got some little gifts. Just the little things. He got a water bottle he wanted. And got these markers he's been wanting. And I'm watching him just color and like this is life. This is
You're letting him
good.
be a kid,
This is
which
good.
is more than
Absolutely.
you got to enjoy
Absolutely.
at age 11,
Yeah.
12.
Yep.
And you gave me goosebumps with your son asking you about proposing in marriage
Yeah.
because that my son's been married 5 years now, but I remember those conversations, and I know that I said, well, you have to go ask her
Mhm.
dad for her
Mhm.
hand,
Mhm.
and he came back. He said, her dad said, why would you ask me? And well, because Dad said so. Yeah. He said, "Well," he says, "I can't give you my blessing." And Tom, my son, said, "What? You can't give me?" He says, "No." He says, "I
Yeah.
raised independent women. If she says yes,
Wow.
I'm behind her."
Wow. Well,
And I thought that's an interesting perspective. But he did what he was, what what I think our tradition is to make sure you ask the young
Yeah,
lady's dad
yeah.
for her hand,
I agree. My
and
son-in-law had to come see me. He had to come see
don't make it
me.
easy. Don't make it easy, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's fabulous. To see those kids grown and to understand. I think the other thing I always struggled with is that when they're in a valley, we don't get to give that advice. They have to come and ask,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And I guess the comfort I always had, and you could share what your perspective is, but I know where I was at their age,
mhm.
and if the Lord pulled me out of that valley, I know that He's got this under control. I'm
Yeah,
going to be available.
yeah.
In the counselor season, the word is the teacher season, the word's intentionality. The
Mhm,
coach season, the word is in stay engaged, engagement.
mhm,
And
mhm,
then you hit the counselor season, and the word is availability.
mhm.
But that doesn't mean we get to jump in when
Yep.
they're in a valley and struggling, whether it be financially or spiritually or whatever.
Yeah.
We're available if they need help. Have you had any of those situations?
Yeah, and I think, I'll share a testimony. It's funny, I have what's called my Kroger testimony, right? And I was just, praying for my kids, they were going through different things, and I think that availability probably is the easiest, but the most challenging to me. Like, I'm always available, but I don't wanna be too available or I don't wanna be a too assertive, if you
Mhm,
will.
mhm,
So I think that was a challenge for me, is to not be too assertive, but to be available. I wanted to kind of step in, but I also know that you got to bang your head a couple times in order
mhm.
to grow and mature, especially my boys.
Right.
My daughter, I'm jumping in. I'm sorry, that's my baby girl. I'm jumping in. But even though she's a married woman, so even though my wife tells me you gotta let them. They're grown people. They got to figure it
So
out.
that is the toughest.
It is very hard, but, I was in Kroger one day just sitting in the parking lot just thinking about I was driving thinking about my kids, and I get to the Kroger parking lot, and I just felt like, they gotta know God for themselves.
Mhm,
Like, that was kind of my revelation in the Kroger parking lot. Like, as much as you wanna jump in and make them do right, if you will, like, they gotta have their own God experience,
mhm,
like, we've all had to come to Christ our own separate ways. It wasn't, I'm not here on the backs of my mom's faith or my wife's faith. I'm here on the back of what God did for me specifically in my life. And
mhm,
they got to have their own God experience. So I just got
mhm.
to trust that, the seeds have been planted, it's been watered, and God's going to have to add the increase. So that availability was challenging for me because I wanted to be too available at times
Sure.
to protect, if you will, but I also know that just they have to figure it out.
Right. Well, you're right to be sensitive. I mean, you never know what situations are. I know
Hmm.
a lot of those different situations, but there's one pastor I shared the story that always kept a room in the house available. There's
Mm,
an empty room. Any child that was going through a divorce, going through
yeah.
an addiction issue or
Yeah.
whatever, the room was available,
Right.
and the
Right.
family was all hands on deck to love on them,
Mm.
but they would not enable.
Mhm,
There
mhm.
were criteria, there were boundaries, and what have you. So I think that's something that sounds like you're navigating, and as Alan Jackson says in his song, we're all a work in progress.
Absolutely,
So the
absolutely.
good news is God isn't done with us yet.
Yeah, I was ready to downgrade the house, and my wife said, "No, you never know." So, so we got some extra bedrooms upstairs.
Well, there's a wisdom in that, and there you go. The Lord bless you with the right woman again, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got the grandbabies now, so the grandbabies, they've kind of, there's it's their rooms now. So,
Uh, only great parents get promoted to grandparents.
hey, I'll take it.
Well, man, there's some great advice there, and I hope you heard that resonating sound of go when you pass that baton versus the clank of the baton across the stadium when dads drop the baton. So our charge is to pass the baton well to the next generation. That's the dad you're called to be, and that's the dad the next generation needs. God bless. Godspeed.